It's 6,047 in the morning. Steam curls off your coffee. And out there, past the glass, your feeder sits exactly where it always sits. Full, untouched, swinging gently in the wind. Except, something's missing. No wings, no chatter, no flicker of color darting between the branches. Yesterday, there were finches. The day before, a pair of nuthatches working the trunk like clockwork. This morning, nothing. Just silence and a feeder no one wants. You tell yourself it's the weather. Maybe they found a better tree. Maybe it's nothing at all. But honestly, somewhere in the last 72 hours, a decision was made, not by you, about you. Your garden was quietly voted off the map, and the strange part is, you probably caused it, without even lifting a finger. Here's what most people never really realize. Birds don't just wander off the way we like to imagine. There's no aimless drifting, no random exploration. Every single flight path a wild bird takes comes from constant, silent risk assessment. Thousands of tiny calculations happening every second based on signals you'll never consciously notice. To them, a garden isn't just a food source. It's a negotiated space. It's a contract renewed daily, built entirely on trust. And trust in the wild, it's fragile. It isn't built through your kindness. It's built through predictability. The second that predictability breaks, even just a little bit, the calculation flips. You didn't scare them away with a loud noise or a sudden movement. You broke something quieter. Something you can't see, but they can feel instantly. This matters more than it feels like it should, because once you actually understand what drives a bird's decision to stay or leave, you stop feeling so powerless when your yard suddenly goes quiet. You start reading it, like a message written in absence instead of sound. What feels like abandonment is really just information, a verdict. And once you figure out the rules of that verdict, you get something pretty rare. The ability to earn the trust of a wild animal that literally owes you nothing. By the end of this, you won't just know why they left. You'll know exactly what it takes to be let back in. Before we go any further, though, this is the kind of stuff we look at here. Decoding those quiet signals nature sends that almost everyone just walks right past. If your brain likes chewing on that, staying subscribed means you won't miss the next one. Now, back to your empty feeder. We like to imagine wild birds as opportunists, free spirits, here today, somewhere else tomorrow, no hard feelings. Honestly, that's almost entirely wrong. Most feeder-visiting species chickadees, finches, sparrows, tits operate on a cognitive map, a mental catalog of every reliable food source in their territory, ranked by safety and consistency. Your garden isn't a random stop. It kind of feels like a random drop-in, but it's actually just an entry on a list, competing against every other entry. And here's what most people don't realize, that ranking isn't fixed. It gets recalculated constantly, in real time, based on the smallest shifts in your behavior. Did you move the feeder by even a few feet? Did you refill it 2 hours later than usual? Maybe a new object appeared near the percha hose, a chair or a weird reflection off a window that wasn't there last week. To you, these are non-events. To a bird whose survival depends on pattern recognition, they're red flags. Each one chips away at your garden's ranking. Stack enough of them together, and the location quietly drops off the list. Not with a scene, not with panic, just silence. Here's something that surprises almost everyone. Birds don't reward abundance. They reward reliability. A feeder that's overflowing one week and empty the next is, statistically, way more dangerous to depend on than a feeder that offers less food but always delivers it right on schedule. Think about it from their side of the glass. Every single visit to your yard costs energy and exposes them to predators. A bird isn't just asking if there's food. It's deciding whether it can stake part of its daily survival plan on this exact spot, at this exact time, without gambling its life on uncertainty. The moment that answer turns into a maybe, they start hedging their bets. They might still visit, but a lot less. They start splitting their trust across 2, 3, or 4 other yards instead of staying loyal to yours. It looks like fewer birds are showing up, but honestly, it's actually a demotion, and demotions rarely reverse on their own. Once a location earns a maybe, it takes far longer to climb back up to a yes than it took to fall in the first place. There's a small detail almost no one clocks. In most gardens, 1 or 2 birds arrive first, always. The scouts. These early arrivals aren't just hungry. They're checking things out, listening for alarm calls from neighboring territories, scanning for movement, testing whether yesterday's safety still holds true today. Only once the scout feeds without incident does the rest of the group finally commit. This is the part people miss. A single bad experience, a cat sighting, a sudden loud noise, or an unfamiliar shadow crossing the lawn at the wrong moment can cost you the whole flock, even if only one single bird actually witnessed it. See, birds actually talk, not with words, obviously, but through how they act. If a scout gets spooked and takes off without eating, that sends a massive warning. And every other bird close by gets it instantly. Not today. Maybe not ever. The thing is, you might never actually see that split second happen. You only see what happens after a feeder that used to be packed with birds just sitting there, totally quiet, days later. All because of a single moment you weren't even there to witness. And honestly, this is where it gets kind of personal. Every single time you walk outside, water your plants, open up a window, or let the dog out, you're putting off data. Timing, patterns, threat levels, they're tracking all of it. They aren't just watching to see when food shows up, they're watching you, your routine, your rhythm, where you usually walk, even how predictable your footsteps sound when you're walking on gravel. So if your schedule is all over the place, maybe you wake up at different times, pop out near the feeder unexpectedly, or just have random outdoor habits, it looks high risk to them. Not because you'd ever hurt them, but to a bird, unpredictability is the danger. That's just how they're wired to survive. And this is the slow fade nobody really talks about. It's rarely one big dramatic scare. It's just a gradual buildup of you becoming too hard for them to predict. Once your yard crosses that invisible line, the flock doesn't make a big scene. They just stop showing up. But there's one more thing that almost nobody thinks about. You aren't the only option around. Somewhere close by, probably a lot closer than you think, another yard is quietly beating yours. Same birds, same time of year, but maybe that neighbor has a slightly more reliable schedule. A calmer yard, fewer surprises. Birds don't really do loyalty. Not the way we do. For them, it's all about safety and reliability. And their preference shifts the second another spot proves it can be trusted, day after day. That's why it feels so sudden and honestly a little personal when they just vanish. But it's really not. It's not that your garden failed some massive test. It's just that somewhere down the street, another yard won a quiet, invisible competition you didn't even know you were playing. So by now, a picture's forming. Your garden isn't just a patch of land with a feeder on it. Honestly, it's a candidate in an ongoing evaluation, assessed daily, scored constantly, and compared against every other rival option within flight range. And the birds you saw yesterday, they weren't guests. They were auditors. Every single one of them carried a verdict back to the rest of the flock. A verdict written not in what you did, but in what you changed. Which honestly raises the real question. If a wild creature with a brain the size of a peanut can read your habits this precisely, what else has it already noticed about you that you haven't even noticed about yourself? Here's the reveal. The birds in your garden were never assessing your kindness. They were assessing your stability. And in doing so, they became one of the most accurate, judgment-free mirrors of your own daily rhythm that exists. A quiet garden isn't a punishment. It's a reflection. It's telling you, in the only language it has, that something in your pattern shifted. And an animal wired by millions of years of survival instinct picked up on it before you consciously did. That's the twist. This was never really about the birds leaving you. It was about them noticing you changed, before you even noticed it yourself. So picture that same morning again. Steam rising off your coffee. The feeder swinging gently, completely untouched. Except now you see it differently. That silence isn't rejection, it's a message waiting to be decoded. Proof that somewhere out there, a small, watchful creature was paying closer attention to your life than you were. Rebuild the rhythm, and you don't just bring the birds back. You prove to something wild and unbothered by your excuses that you're worth trusting again. So, when did your garden go quiet? Tell me the last time you saw them down below.